What's up, everybody, and welcome to Attractions Cast, the Attractions 2 podcast. We are testing being live on Instagram while we are recording the podcast today, so I'm checking to see if this is going to work. The aspect ratio is wrong on Instagram. I apologize. It's like super centered as opposed to being the full horizontal. So if you're watching this on Instagram, unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with either my face dead centered like this or just a partial version of the three squares. Sorry, but you can listen to it and write in and have any comments or questions, let us know. Today, we are talking all about Star Wars. Today is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So we have some pretty cool Star Wars stuff today. Our first guest, you know him, you love him. I will get his Instagram and his Twitter and his YouTube channels correct today. It's Mr. Pete Carney. It's at Adventures by Carney.
What's going on, everybody?
Or at Official Pete. No, sorry, Official Carney. Just kidding. On Instagram and Twitter. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a big Star Wars day, so I have to pretend I know a lot about Star Wars because everyone assumes since I'm a Disney nut that I'm also a Star Wars nut. And I just keep referencing Batuu and Galaxy's Edge because that's about how much I know.
Yeah, fun fact for anybody who doesn't know is that Pete, one of the nice things that, or the funny things or interesting things I thought about the show is that Pete has basically never seen a Star Wars movie. Like, he's seen a couple of them, but
I've never seen like a movie. So to be fair, it's not like I discriminate against Star Wars. I just lost like the 80s and 90s of my life. So from 2000 on, I've seen movies. Pre that, it's a long shot.
Nice. Okay, so I accidentally hit the wrong key, so you kind of already saw Darren a little bit. So our special guest today is Mr. Darren Moser, also known as Dr. Sci-Fi. Darren has built a ton of really cool Star Wars things. He'll talk about that in a little bit. You'll see some of them in his background. He's also a theme park nerd, just like the rest of us, but he is like the ultimate Star Wars guy. So I thought it'd be really fun to have Darren and Pete on. And then it's just me in the middle of like, I've seen the movies.
Colliding worlds.
And so we kind of have the gamut of Star Wars here. So, Mr. Darren, how are you doing?
Doing well. Oh, man, ultimate Star Wars guy. That's, I don't know if I can live up to that, but I'll do my best.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that you have this just obnoxiously awesome setup behind you, I'm pretty sure we can say that you are the ultimate Star Wars fan. I mean, you've got K2SO back here, and then the other character over your left shoulder, who is that?
So that is the helmet for my L337 costume. So that was the droid from Solo, A Star Wars Story.
That's right. The droid who I thought was voiced by Captain Phasma.
No, that was Phoebe Waller-Bridge who did the voice and body work for L3.
Exactly.
From Fleabag.
But her voice was so similar. Like, my wife and I were watching it going, wait a minute, did they cast the same? No, they wouldn't have done. No.
Yeah, no, not Gwendolyn Christie.
No. All right, so let's jump into the room here and let's have a chat. What's up, everybody? There we are. There's all three of us, unless you're on Instagram, and then it's just Darren right in the middle. But that's all right. I apologize, Darren, that you're just like dead smack in the middle. Like, literally, I'm looking at the Instagram feed. It's perfectly framed up on Darren. Like, it looks really good on Darren. So it's just our special guest, Darren.
Oh, it's an honor to the guests. I understand.
The guest. It's funny. People are chastising me on Instagram for not knowing the name of of the droid. I apologize. Like I said, I'm not the uber Star Wars fan.
There's so much to know in Star Wars. It's okay not to know everything. That's what friends and the internet are for.
Exactly.
I can't believe you messed that up, Josh. Unbelievable.
It's insane, right? Kind of like messing up the co-host's Instagram and Twitter handle. That's just terrible. For those who don't know, last week I introduced Pete as his channels were Official Pete and Adventures by Pete, and they're not at all. Like, that isn't it. It's not what it is.
I keep my first name private. That's ridiculous.
I know. I'm sorry for putting it publicly above your head for everybody to see.
That's why I'm chatting in the live Instagram chat, so that way people know who I am.
Oh, perfect. I'm going to keep checking that off and on here and see if we have any questions or comments or anybody wants to know anything Star Wars, because Darren, I think, is our guy for probably the most obscure Star Wars stuff kind of like my brother. My younger brother is like, he's literally read, I think, every book. He's seen every movie, seen every episode of every TV show. He's a Star Wars nerd completely and totally. And I'll say, like, what is that? And he'll go like this long history about this obscure symbol inside of Galaxy's Edge or something. It's obnoxious. So I thought we would start by going through sort of Disneyland and Star Wars, with Disney and Star Wars, and sort of not the history of it, but just the first ride, right? Which is Star Tours. And that original incarnation of Star Tours. Because now there's been 2. I like to think of it as kind of like 3, because you had like the original incarnation, and then you had Star Wars: The Adventure Continues, and then you have like these movie overlays, which when the movie comes in, it's like the third scene of the ride just is the movie, and you don't have a choice about it. And to me, I feel like that's like a third version to me, where I'm like, no, it's no longer random. It's like I'm always going to this other place. As a side note, I have yet to see Rise of Skywalker, so I still don't know what that last battle is, but I've been on the ride.
Man.
I know it's on. It's like available today for free, and I still haven't seen it. It's my. I'll see it eventually. Here we go. So Skywalking Adventure has said, how about that interview with Dan, former VP of GE's, was going to be Tatooine. Oh, WDW's Galaxy's Edge was going to be Tatooine. Pete, do you know anything about this? There was apparently an interview.
Yeah. So there's concept art and news that came out this past week. That they were going to do Tatooine, or is Endor another place?
Endor is another place.
It is a place.
Yeah. But they were shot around some concept art ideas, and Tatooine was kind of in the forefront. And it actually, if you look at the concept art, was going to be where Gertie was in Disney's Hollywood Studios. They were kind of going to redo that whole area, which made sense because then Star Tours would have been inside of Galaxy, or not Galaxy's Edge, but would have been inside this Tatooine Star Wars land place. But then eventually they were looking at size and looking at budget. It also was kind of, I think they shook up who was working on the project as well. But anyway, make a long story short, they saw they had more space in the back of the park. There was more room to kind of grow into the land. And then this
Star Crash.
So keep in mind, too, that they were not planning this for just one park. They were planning this to fit into 2 different parks simultaneously with different footprints and sizes. And the back of Hollywood Studios kind of more synced up and worked with the space available at Disneyland in California. So, yeah, they pushed it to the back of the park. And once you got rid of Streets of America, Osborne Family Lights, Lights, Motors, Action, that freed up a lot of real estate in the back of Hollywood Studios.
Oh, interesting.
But now they have to figure out how they're going to tie in Star Tours into the land, which I have a whole theory on. But for right now,
we'll chat about that in a second, because I kind of want to go through Star Tours again, like we were saying. But there was just an Instagram comment about this Tatooine newsfeed, so I wanted to know what on earth that was about before the comment got lost in the Twitter or the Instagram.
And then the ex-VP, Dan Cockrell, is the one who kind of confirmed it as well, besides the concept art.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's 100% confirmed that was it both coasts or just WDW was supposed to be Tatooine?
Well, there was no Hollywood Studios on the West Coast. I mean, they were doing a Star Wars land on both coasts. On the East Coast, it was supposed to be where Gertie is, outside of Indiana Jones, kind of that entire area. If you just kind of gutted from Hollywood Boulevard over from Tune and Lounge, like I said, Gertie, Peavy's, the front of the Frozen show, they literally was going to go from like Hollywood Boulevard up to Star Tours. Because they already built the AT-ATs or AT-ATs, whatever you want to call them. There was already theming, but then that entire kind of footprint got nixed, and they said, okay, and then they also were playing with what they were going to do. They weren't sure if it was going to be Tatooine or if they were going to do a different planet or a different scene. Because, again, when you're building these lands, you're building this for multiple generations. This has to last, they hope, at least 50 years. They want it to last.
Are you building it for multi-generation? I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the hate and the flack, and I've taken a lot of my friends to Galaxy's Edge because I love to get true fans' opinions. But I mean, like, I'm sure we'll get into it later on. But so it was confirmed for at least Hollywood Studios. There's kind of 2 different rumors. One, was it going to be Tatooine? Yes, it was discussed. It was never confirmed, and then they threw out all the plans. It was just something that was discussed, and also the different location. So that was rumors, and then Dan Cockrell confirmed it, and also concept art that surfaced confirmed that as well.
Oh, interesting. And this is all on top of, I don't know if you remember this, Pete, and Darren, I'm pretty sure you remember this. So Darren's a West Coast guy, so he's more connected to Disneyland.
We're at Batu West.
Batu West, yeah, okay. Disneyland, a number of years ago, had released plans for a Tomorrowland Star Wars overlay, where like the satellite is on top of the old People Mover. Loading Bay was going to be the Millennium Falcon, and it was going to be a walkthrough where you met Chewie and like took a picture, and then they were going to gut Interventions, and they were going to, if I remember right, they were going to tear out Autopia. And that was
I think Autopia was going to become some sort of Endor speeder bike ride.
What, yeah. And
like
as far as I remember, it was supposed to be inside of the Innoventions building and then launch out over into where Autopia is and then come back in. So basically Tron.
Autopia is huge. Like, it has a huge footprint. People don't
massive.
really realize that.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And they would have had to have removed the People Mover track, obviously, removed a bunch of the monorail track, removed Autopia, and it was this big thing. And everyone was like, what? And then like 6 months, maybe? It died fast. It was not
well. And at the end of the day, I don't want Tomorrowland to be Star Wars Land. I want it to be Tomorrowland. I want it to be able to evolve and change and have new ideas. Because once you make it Star Wars Land, it's kind of Star Wars Land for forever. So
right, exactly.
I think they did good adding a new, and footprint-wise, I'm pretty sure, Galaxy's Edge is larger than it would have been if it was just a remake of Tomorrowland. At least out here, because our park is smaller.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I don't believe it was going to be a full over. I think it was just like a partial overlay of the back end, because as far as I remember, Space Mountain was staying, and a bunch of the front end attractions were staying. So it was just like shooing in a couple of extra Star Wars things into Tomorrowland as opposed to building a full immersive land. Just super interesting. Okay, so real quick, so Star Tours. So
I'll update just so I get it correct. If you want, I'll update it. So I'm getting this from WDWNT.com. In a recent interview, former VP Dan Cockrell confirmed long-standing rumors that the original concept for Star Wars themed land at Hollywood Studios included Tatooine and far more from the original Star Wars trilogy. The first plans were to expand Star Wars' presence in the park, included the Mos Eisley Cantina and the new version of the Jedi Training Academy show dating back to 2011. These projects were developed shortly after the completion of Star Tours, The Adventure Continues, in 2011. The plans also included the Forest Moon of Endor as a teaser hidden in a display in the 2013 D23 Expo for the speeder bike thrill ride that would have allowed guests to take part in a mission during the Battle of Endor in Return of the Jedi. Other attractions in the land would have included a Jabba's Palace dinner show, the aforementioned Mos Eisley Cantina, and a Path of the Force, a dark ride explaining the secrets and the lore of the Jedi and the Sith. This Endor Tatooine themed land was set to be built over the Echo Lake section of the park, including Dirty the Dinosaur's extinction, stretching down to Star Tours, which makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
In 2015, rumors persisted that the Echo Lake area was going to close, but then it seems a shift in the plans to the latter portion of 2014 led to a project moving to the back of the park. And then eventually it was announced at D23 in 2015 that construction would start in spring of 2016. And then Bob Iger admitted to canceling the Endor and Tatooine plans in December of 2014, where he explained why the land would be focused on the Disney film trilogy. And these were rumors that were surfaced and they reported on in the past, so it was nice to see them come to the front. But that's the whole article, so that way I'm not misquoting anything.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of cool, though. Those rides sound super cool. I would love that kind of dark ride, and I would love that speeder bike. And I wonder if the reason that was kind of canceled is because they were also planning on doing a speeder bike in Tomorrowland here at the Magic Kingdom as well. Yeah. Because the Tron coaster in Shanghai was actually originally planned for Magic Kingdom here first, shelved. Then when they decided to open Shanghai, they sent it there. And now in funny and true form, it's coming back here to Orlando where it was originally planned for.
Oh, interesting. Now if we could just get the Moana volcano coaster, that would be even better.
Fire Mountain, baby.
But that's another show. Okay, so the original Star Tours was one of my favorite original attractions for sure. Even the Saran wrap ice thing that you flew through at one point, that just clearly was it just looked like somebody had covered rocks in Saran wrap and were like, they're frozen, kind of like Batman and Robin when Mr. Freeze would freeze somebody.
It's a step above Captain EO, but not much.
Yeah, well, and Captain EO always to me felt like a Star Wars film. I mean, it basically was, right? It's like the same team, nearly. Well, George Lucas was involved, and that's what I meant. But
it's ILM.
Yeah, and so it always felt to me like an extension of Star Wars. Like it felt like it would fit perfectly. Particularly the entire trench run at the beginning of Captain EO. That was basically just the trench run, but as opposed to like spacey looking walls, it was just like theater, like a truss. Basically.
You have Star Wars merged with like Star Trek First Contact and the Borg. Like that's basically Captain EO.
Exactly. Okay, I'm stealing that. That's the best way to put that ever. Yeah, it's exactly. If Star Wars and the Borg from First Contact merged and had a Star Wars film baby, it was Captain EO with a lot of dancing. You guys both went on that original attraction, correct?
Yes. Before it became
when did they change it?
2011 ish.
Then maybe.
Really?
2011.
You don't know if you went on the original Star Tours, Pete?
No, because the thing is I went to Hollywood Studios in 92-ish.
Okay.
And then I didn't go back to Hollywood Studios until maybe I did go on it. I think it was like 2011. And I was there with a girlfriend, and I didn't know anything about the parks, and I wasn't really a fan of the parks. I only became a true, like, mega fan of Disney parks about, I don't know, 7 years ago.
Who was your captain? Because that's the good way to tell. Because if Rex was your captain, that's the original ride.
Yeah.
If 3PO was your captain, that's the adventure continues.
So
was it Pee-wee Herman?
Rex is the short little one.
Yeah, I want to say
is the tall gold one.
I really don't remember. You know, and again, they kind of blend together. And I've been on it so often in the last 6 years. I don't even think I remember. It wasn't memorable enough because also I wasn't a Star Wars fan, and I had never seen the movies. So, and not that I wasn't a fan, I just hadn't seen the movies, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just kind of went.
Fan,
was like,
but I've never had any desire to watch anything Star Wars.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I've been on the original to answer your question.
Interesting. That's it. Wow. Okay. So your lack of Star Wars. I didn't realize it extended that. I figured you had been on the original attraction. Okay, so Darren, this will be for you. So you've been on the new one at Star Tours Adventures Continues, obviously.
Yes.
And you've been on it without movie overlays, like the actual
correct
actual ride, not the
second version where they take you to new places and 3PO's your captain and,
yes, exactly.
and so forth.
Where you actually had
the Imperial spy era, you could kind of say.
Yeah, well, I mean, they still
the rebel spy.
Still have the rebel spy, but now it's one of those like the movie's out, so the ending's always the same, or it's like the movie's out, so now the main character from the movie is the message that you always get. You don't get the randomized message kind of a thing. In your opinion, they're two very different rides, I think. But in your opinion, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the randomized one where like timeline doesn't matter? Or do you prefer the original that's actually put in a specific moment in time in the Star Wars universe?
I think I like the Adventure Continues where it has, because I think that's the fully fleshed out realization of what Star Tours could be. The fact that you have the randomization because that's the kind of ride it is, a simulator ride. Whereas in the original ride, it was, like you said, it was the exact same every single time. And not that was bad, but the fact that when they added that, it was like so much more. And you're like, oh, and you want to ride it again and again. And you're like, oh, what is there a way to, if I ride it in the morning, does it change? Or is it if I ride it in the afternoon? And it just kind of made it a little more interactive in that regard. And because it built upon the first one, like you still saw the Rex droids like in the queue and they all had the defective sticker on them and whatnot. And, you had subtle nods to it. So it was just kind of, an evolution of the ride. But what really I think Star Tours should have always been with the multi pathways and the different plots. I think if they could have done that from the very beginning, I think that, is what they really probably wanted to do. They just weren't quite there yet. Yeah,
I mean, technology in the 80s I don't think was there. I mean, considering, as far as I remember, the history of that ride is they basically went to the Air Force and went, hey, that's a cool training system. Can we have some? And then just...
Yeah, they bought 4 of them.
just craned them into a building. And people were like, what is this crazy thing that you just put in? Like, as far as I remember, it's the first motion-based simulator in a theme park, correct? I believe
Probably.
And Eisner went to his son and was like, "Is this cool?" And his son said yes. So he said, "Okay, we'll keep it."
Yeah, exactly. And then they made Body Wars?
Which is how he made all his decisions, apparently, was his son.
Yeah, well, some of them worked out, I think. Indiana Jones, Star Wars. They seem to have worked out.
Eisner did a great job.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Eisner fan. We'll get into that eventually on another episode. But I'm a huge Eisner fan. I actually worked at Disneyland during the Eisner era, and then I worked at Disneyland during the beginning of the Bob Iger era. So I got to see both, like, welcome to Disney CEO videos and stuff, and it was very interesting seeing the differences. This is for another episode, but I thoroughly enjoyed the Eisner era. Okay, so we went from the original Star Tours to Star Tours Adventures Continues, which added I don't say the multiverse, but it added like all these different possibilities.
The choose your own adventure,
right? You can't choose your own adventure. Choose.
Right.
I don't know how to say that. We'll choose your own adventure for you, and you'll enjoy it. Even though all anybody ever wanted was the pod racing scene, that's like the one thing that anybody actually wanted to do.
So we could just say randomized adventures.
Yeah, well, you could, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that they were actually randomized, because I remember at certain times I would go, like I'd been on it, over and over again within 30 minutes because there was no line a couple times. And if you went on the same simulator, it was the same scenario.
So it was more randomized depending on which actual simulator you went on. Like they're like, this hour block simulator 1 is running X.
I think so. I don't think it was random every single time in every single different simulator. Like I think it was like, okay, yeah, like for the next hour this is running this block, and the next 30 whatever, and this one's running this one.
That makes sense that they kind of simplified it a little bit, because unless you literally write it over and over and over and over, you're not going to pick up on that.
Yeah, exactly. And the few times that I got to do it 2 or 3 times in a row within, like I said, 20, 30 minutes, where it was just like no line and you just got off and got back on and ran through, that's the way it was. And that's unfortunately kind of the way it is when the movies come out. So just recently I went on, when did I go on? It was in November, I think. November, October, I went on, no, it was when the film had come out. So this must have been in late November, early December? I don't know.
Well, the movie came out in December.
Yeah, it came out in December. But I can't remember when they started running the promo on Star Tours for the new film. Whenever that was, it was right after that had started. I went on, and we had fast passes, so we went to that right in the morning. But there was no line, so we went through the normal queue, which took 5 minutes. Got off, used our fast pass, which then took 2 seconds. So we rode it twice within like 20 minutes, and it was the exact same ride both times. So the randomization
Kylo Ren and all that at the end.
Exact same. So I'm wondering if when the films come out, if they just flip off the randomization so that they can promote the movie.
Probably.
Which is that third version.
It's relevant. That's when it's relevant, and it's gonna go away after the movie comes out after a while. So like,
well, and that's what I say.
If you put all that time, energy, and work, and Imagineering behind it, then you're gonna make sure everyone sees it. Yeah. Plus, that's kind of what a lot of locals, I think, go for, is they want to see the new version. So if you had to go on and only 1 out of 10 had the new movie in it, you'd be so pissed as like a local or someone coming to the park often.
Although I would have liked to
kind of benefits both. Like Disney gets to promote their film, and then the locals get to see a new version of a ride that they go on over and over again.
But the other thing, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, because it was the opening where you were in the water with the Death Star, and then you took off, and then Lando did the message, and then the end was the big battle. The big battle scene, which apparently I still haven't seen the movie, but I was on the ride and my sister sitting next to me, she turns to me and she's like, "Spoiler alert!" Like, just letting you know. And I'm like, I have no idea.
I mean, you see half of that stuff in the trailer.
That scene with all the Star Destroyers was in the trailer, so whatever. If I remember right, the only other Disneyland before Galaxy's Edge Star Tours-ish attraction was there was a small section of Star Wars on the People Mover. So you would leave the People Mover track, you'd come up and you'd go over to the left and you would go through Tron, I think it was the first thing you went through on the People Mover, where there's just 2 screens on the sides and you go through that. And then I want to say after that, when you would go through the Star Tours building, it would...
Before they put those panels up? So you couldn't see down into the...
Yeah.
Because I remember for a while, pre-Rocket Rods, you could look down into the queue.
Yeah, because that was the old Journey Through Inner Space, or Journey Through Inner Space, Journey into Inner Space. Anybody watching this live, correct me. So whatever it is, that building Yeah, you could look down, you could see the mighty microscopes shrinking all the guests into little tiny guests. But from there, you would speed up, and you would basically speed up into, if I remember right, it was a stormtrooper with its gun pointed at you, and then you would make like a hard right, and then Darth Vader was there. But they were kind of like static. They weren't even really animatronics.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of like did like a lean forward type thing.
Low-key dark ride. Yeah, not really much.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a Star Wars thing in the parks in addition to Star Tours. And I remember being like, really young, 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that, and going on that a whole bunch because we lived in Anaheim. We had season passes at that point, and that being a big deal for me because it was like Star Wars, like it's a Stormtrooper, and you'd go by, and then they would just do their little like whatever it was that they just kind of like half leaned towards you, or like it was like somebody behind the mannequin just like pushed it, and then like a rope caught it, and then it pulled it back, and that's what it looked like. It was bad. But if I remember right, that was the only other Star Wars thing in the parks, correct? It was Star Tours here on the East Coast, Star Tours on the West Coast, and there was that little thing in the People Mover, and that was it. Pre-Galaxy's Edge.
Well, you had the Jedi Training Academy.
Well, and then the Training Academy started, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they started adding little things, like there was the build your own lightsaber in the store at the end of the queue,
right.
which was super
and eventually
popular.
Star Trader became pretty much 90% Star Wars.
Right.
That shifted over.
Yeah. And there is still, actually, I don't know if it's still there, but as much as a few years ago it was still there. If you're in the queue for Space Mountain, when you're on the side of you're not in the fast pass queue, but the standby queue, and you're wrapping around next to Star Trader. The glass that you're looking through is actually the upstairs of Star Trader. It used to be, I think it used to be part of the arcade, and now it's just used, or at least a few years ago, it was just used for employee stuff. So like when I worked there, we would have like lunches, or if like someone's birthday happened, we'd all have cake up in there, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it has that futuristic space art in the top.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that area.
And I want to say it was in there for a while, and then they moved it, or it was always in Star Tours. One of the two places, but there was one of the original X-Wings
right.
from one of the opening days.
I think it started there, and then they moved it right into the Star Trader where it's like right there above you.
And I think now it's there now, yeah. If you look up, there's a giant like full-size X-Wing, which was super cool. And that was just another one of those like, oh look, it's Star Wars in the parks, like that's what it looks like. Oh my god, it's real. And I feel like everybody was clamoring for it so hard that when Disney must have been planning this Galaxy's Edge thing.
I mean, you all knew once
years.
Disney bought Star Wars, they're going to add it to them. I mean, it's a no. It's just when.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when, not if.
Oh, and even before they bought it, because I want to say all that Disneyland stuff that we had talked about before with the Millennium Falcon on top of the People Mover track, that was all pre-purchase. I want to say.
True.
So they had been planning to add a bunch of Star Wars stuff for a long time.
Iger talks about this in his book when he had sit-downs with George Lucas, and also when he had ideas to purchase it in general, is that it was already in the parks, and Iger kind of references it in his book saying, like, I already saw a land, like I already saw how we could, this is one of the most popular franchises in history, and how can we expand it and bring this to future generations? So it kind of was in his head from the beginning, and this was I think he said in his book, this was like years before he finally convinced George to sell.
I think you're right. I vaguely remember reading this. I've read the book once, but I was on an audiobook version, but I was like on the treadmill dying, so I vaguely remember part of this. Obviously, Star Wars is super successful in the parks. Obviously, people want it. Obviously, people love the movies. I mean, I remember when they re-released the films in theaters, it was like we were there.
Yeah.
Like
97, 98, right before Phantom Menace, you get the special edition coming out. And I remember it was like, boom, boom, boom. Like you had one, like New Hope was out for a couple months, and then Empire was for a couple months, and then I think like January the next year was Return of the Jedi.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And it's so good.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was too young to ever to have had I can speak, see any of the films in the theater before. I might have been able, no, I don't think I would have been able to see Jedi, because when did Jedi come out? 84?
83.
83. Yeah, no, I wasn't even born yet, so I wouldn't have been able to see it.
And they still had that amazing trailer where it starts on the little TV that's square in the middle, and it's like for an entire generation.
And then like it blows up, right?
And then it blows up, and it's fully edited. Oh man, it's such a good trailer.
Oh, it's the best. I remember that.
Good.
I distinctly remember that about Star Wars when I was younger, and then when the Phantom Menace came out, I distinctly remember Pizza Hut having like the faces of the characters on the boxes. And I remember people in my family when we went and saw the movie.
All the Pepsi cans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pepsi. It was huge with Pepsi. But I remember everybody in my family, when the movie came out with Phantom Menace, they would all like conspire. I think the whatever is the Chancellor is. I think Palpatine is the Emperor. And I'm sitting in the back there going, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Like, of course he is. But they were like, but I think so. And I'm like,
yeah, I remember that, where people were kind of, oh, well, if you look at the side profile, and it's like, well, why are we talking about this? But yeah, it all worked out.
It's very clear that okay. Anyway, and then they kill off the best villain, second best villain that Star Wars has ever had, in my opinion. Well, kill off. Back, so. Yeah, they bring him back with spider legs. Pete, la 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 la. He's got his fingers in his ears. For those who can't see it,
it was 99, Pete. You've had time.
You've had 21 years, Pete. And you've had a full 6 weeks of isolation.
Here's the deal, too, is that I'm a movie buff. I love going to the movies. And I want to go watch the new movies because people talk about them. And I have Galaxy's Edge literally in my backyard. But I want to watch them in true order. So I'm only...
Are you talking about release order or chronological?
Release order in theaters is how I want to watch the entire...
Well, they are all on Disney Plus. You could marathon it in like a day.
And then today, did you hear the news today about the new one?
No, what happened?
About Taika Waititi?
Yeah, Taika Waititi, who won Best Adapted Screenplay for Jojo Rabbit, is going... He also directed the season finale of The Mandalorian.
He also directed Thor Ragnarok.
He's co-writing the new Star Wars feature film for theatrical release.
He's going to direct it and co-write it. Yeah, that's fantastic. He's probably the perfect person for Star Wars, in my opinion.
He has a lot of good grace right now with everybody, so I could see him. Yeah. Like, he's obviously going to have a different take, but I think that's going to work.
Well, it depends on what they're doing, too. Like, is this going to be Old Republic? Like, I don't... It depends on what story they're telling, right?
Well, it's going to be another... Isn't it? Aren't they starting a whole new thing?
Yeah.
Like, they're not...
Yeah, it's...
I mean, but you look at directors, like, not being a fan, like, I look in from the outside, and like, when J.J. Abrams did that new one, right after they purchased it in December of 2012, they immediately, like, called J.J. Abrams, and I think the release was 2015. But, like, everyone loved it. They were like, he's the best.
Well, not everybody loved it, but yeah.
I mean, like, it also made $2 billion. They'd only paid $4 billion for Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
So, like, and that's when Iger said, like, he's like, that's when I know I made a good purchase, like, whatever it is. Yeah. But then, like, when Rian Johnson did his, like, or however you pronounce his name, Ron John or whatever.
I think it's Rian. It's almost like Ryan, but Rian. I think it's Rian.
Whatever. Whenever Rihanna did it,
Umbrella, Ella.
That was like love-hate. Like, half the Star Wars universe, I feel like, loved it, and the other half, like, really didn't like it.
Yeah, I was not a fan of whatever it's called. I don't even remember the name.
The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. I was not a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the story they were trying to tell. And the themes that were in the movie, but just I wasn't a fan of the way it was put together, in my opinion. I think there's better ways that you could have done it. Although I did think it was very, very ballsy to go completely silent, like no audio whatsoever as a filmmaker. I think that was a very, like, to the point where they had to put warnings up. I remember seeing in IMAX and there was a warning.
That was a great scene, but there's no reason to think that the theater's broken. I'm still looking at not the Star Wars Solo and Rogue One, but just the saga, the sequel trilogy. I've always kind of looked at it as this is Disney getting their footing. Like, I honestly feel like no matter what happens, whether it's good, whether it's bad, it's going to make money.
Yeah.
10 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, oh, yeah, remember those first few films? And, oh, yeah, some people liked them, some people didn't. But now, we have this director making something, and, oh, here's another trilogy, or here's more television. Like, we're going to have more Star Wars, and that's going to be great. Like, It's not all hung on the mantle of the sequel trilogy. Like, we're past that.
Well, and that's
how I look at it.
And the thing that I've said before, not on the show, obviously we've never talked about Star Wars, but The Last Jedi, whether you like it, whether you hate it, you think it's a terrible movie, you think it's a great movie, whatever, you're judging it based on other Star Wars films. But if you just judge it on, like, cinema in general, that movie is a magnificent, like, creation. Like, just the amount of stuff that was in it and the things that they pulled off and the story that they told is far superior than 75% of all other movies that are made. But it's Anyway, not really get into that.
It also had a budget of $275 million. Like that's what some movies hope to make on the best day of the year, and that's what they spent on the movie.
Well, it's Disney with their massive budget. Keep going here because Pete has a limited time here, and I want to get Pete's thoughts on some of this. So moving forward, we have Galaxy's Edge. So Disney obviously buys Lucasfilm, and they conspire to build a land that they know we all want and everyone's going to freak out about. And then they build Galaxy's Edge. And there's all of this, there's people love it, people hate it. But the one question I have, and I'm curious to see what everyone thinks, because Darren, I know you haven't been to Galaxy's Edge yet, correct?
I haven't, but I know enough, to navigate the conversation.
To voice an opinion. Perfect. Okay. I think it's hilarious too that the Star Wars guy who's not really a Star Wars guy, who's like never really seen the films, has been to Galaxy's Edge a bajillion times, and the guy who's
I've ridden Rise of the Resistance alone more than 2 or 3 times. Like I've been on it a billion times. Like.
Yeah.
I've been every position in the Millennium Falcon, but I still have only seen 1.5 movies.
Which I think is funny.
Well, and the only other thing we got right before Galaxy's Edge was the launch bay.
Yeah. That's right. We didn't talk about launch bay, which was interesting.
What a waste.
Well, you had the character meet and greet. I think that's the biggest thing to take away from that.
Those are really cool. Until they move to the automated boxes, and I'm hoping they move back to when they actually had a real cast member taking your photos, but they went to photo boxes. But I thought, again, not knowing any of the characters, everyone knows Chewie. Like, I had Chewie toys.
It's what? Chewie, Chewie, Darth Vader, and Kylo Ren, right? And BB-8. Okay.
Yeah.
Is BB-8
so it's super cool. And then they changed them out, too. And then they did the Star Wars parade, or what I call the Star Wars fashion show in the middle of Hollywood Studios, where every character kind of came out and was like... and then they would just leave.
We only had that out there in Florida. We didn't have that out here. And you had Star Wars weekends.
Yeah, and if we want to go into all that stuff, East Coast has had Star Wars in Hollywood Studios in a major way for a while now. So there was the whatever the heck that show was, the Star Wars fashion show that ended just a few months ago. And then there was every hour, it felt like all of Hollywood Studios all of a sudden had this Imperial March sound just on loop blasting through the park, where they did the March of the First Order up and down Hollywood Boulevard. I actually just posted a video of that today on Attractions Tube, so those who are watching, go check it out. But then in addition to that, they had the launch bay, they had the Jedi Academy, and then they had Star Wars weekends. Now, I never went to Star Wars weekends. Have either of you ever been to Star Wars weekends?
No, I know people who went out to go to it. The only thing we kind of had like that was we had the Run Disney events, and so they had a Star Wars one for 2 or 3 years, and we some of the costuming groups got to participate in that and be one of the kind of rally areas outside the park. But it was a lot of fun. We didn't have the parade, although exactly 2 years ago in 2017, 18, one of those years.
What year is it now?
They had a May the 4th event at Disneyland, and we had a lot of the costumers come out, and we got to march down the parade route. So that's the only time you've ever seen tons of Star Wars characters, tons of stormtroopers, Darth Vader, all of that, do the whole parade route from back to front.
Well, and for those who don't know, so Darren is part of the 501st, how do you say it? What's the proper...
You can say either, the 501st Legion.
Okay, yeah, so he is a stormtrooper, for those who don't know, and don't know what that is. Can you actually describe what that is real quick for anybody who might not know?
What a stormtrooper is, or what the 501st Legion is?
501st is. If you don't know what a stormtrooper is, just look.
I'm trying to help Pete out. But so the 501st...
to me, exciting if it's like kind of, I don't know, like joining like the Elks Club by me. Well, tell me about this.
So the 501st Legion is a worldwide Star Wars costuming group. There's many costume groups, but this one's been around for 20 plus years, and it was founded by Albin Johnson, and it's primarily about charity and community. So we do a lot of parades, we do hospital visits, we do fundraisers and things like that. And we had a really good relationship with Lucasfilm, which fortunately has continued through into the Disney era. And basically, because we don't own Disney IP at all, but we've all made our own Star Wars costumes. And what the 501st is known for is just kind of making it look like you walked off the screen. So it's a high level of accuracy, a high level of requirement. And so, but the 501st are all of the bad guys. So you have the Stormtroopers, you have Darth Vader, you know, of all of that. Then we have a sister organization called the Rebel Legion, and that's all the good guys. So that's the Leias and the X-wing pilots and all of that. And there's many other groups now. It's kind of grown into a great community. So you have Mandalorian Mercs, you have Droid Builders, you have Dark Empire, Saber Guild, all sorts of things. But kind of the OG, the beginning of all that was the 501st. That's kind of been around the longest. I think we're around 14,000 members worldwide. And it's a lot of fun. I've been involved in it for about 5 years now. Have 2 costumes. I have my Stormtrooper and an officer, so like a black warrant officer.
Awesome.
And something I can sit down in. You know, it's nice.
Nice. That's fantastic. Well, and so since we have your shot here full screen, we'll just we'll keep talking about this. So over your shoulder are a couple of items that, for most people who probably have no idea, you made.
Yeah, so in the last few years, I've enjoyed making a bunch of foam, EVA foam Star Wars droids, and I'm most known for K2SO, who is from Star Wars Rogue One. So that's a puppet, and it actually kind of attaches to a harness in front of me and attaches to my legs, and I can walk with him and make him talk and move his arms. It was kind of mostly shown around on a Tested video a few years back by the people from Tested.
I saw that. I was super jealous of that. I was like, how do you get on Tested? That is so cool.
You know, it pays to be in California sometimes. We do get some awesome opportunities. So there's K2, and then a few years back I built a L337 costume, which you see the dome over there, and that's from Star Wars Solo, Star Wars Story. And I was fortunate enough to take that costume to the Solo premiere that was out here and met Phoebe Waller-Bridge and got to just be on the red carpet and have a photo op with a bunch of people. And that was an amazing experience that I was very fortunate for. And the current project I'm working on, since this is the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back from 1980, is I'm working on a full-size Imperial probe droid, which you can kind of see.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, so it'll look like this guy when it's all done, but he's not quite done yet. It's mostly just the body, and I'm still working on the head, but that's going to be less of a puppet and more of an actual robot where it can drive around on a drive system and scare small children. And yeah, I enjoy making stuff like this, and that's the nice thing about the Droid Builders Club is you basically say, I'm building a droid, and you're in. It's, you know,
that's awesome.
We have a lot of fun together. And one day an R2-D2, but that's down the line. If I built an R2, I would also build like a second dome so I could swap it out and make him like not R2-D2, because often when we do events, you know, there's only one R2-D2, because just like there's only one, you know, Darth Vader.
I thought you were going to say there's one Mickey Mouse, just to keep, because there's only one Mickey Mouse. If you ask a cast member, there's only one. Yeah,
we've done events where we've had more Darth just for rotating, or they'll be in different locations. Same kind of concept. You don't want to see two at the same time.
Have you had the opportunity? I don't know. Are the automated R2-D2 droids, are they on the West Coast yet, or are they just here on the East Coast?
No, they've been out here. I know some people who have seen them, the R2s that roam around. They haven't been out very much, but they have been out.
I had the chance to run into one. I did why can't I think of the name? The launch bay. I did the launch bay video for here. I did like an archive video of it, and as I was leaving, he was out meeting and greeting with people, and so I got to get down. He came up to my cute gimbal thing.
Push. I wish Push would come back.
Push. I love Push.
Push was great.
Push is fantastic.
We just lost Push here. Well, the second rendition of Push, but yeah.
That's fun. So for those who don't listen to a bunch of Disney podcasts, so WDW Today did an event a few years ago, and Push was there and actually married some people at the event.
Aww, that's, I mean, it is a trash can, so I mean, I guess there's some, I don't know. I would not make that choice, but that's cute.
So on Instagram, somebody was asking, do we know if they're going to bring March of the First Order back into Galaxy's Edge? We don't know, as far as I know, but I can't really see that happening.
So I was going to say, and I have to run, but I'll just say this before I go, is that a lot of those shows were temporary because there was nothing if you remember literally 2 years ago, there was like nothing at Hollywood Studios. There was no Toy Story Land yet. There was no Galaxy's Edge.
Right.
They had just taken out Streets of America. So you had Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Star Tours, and that was pretty much it. And then they needed shows, so they and meet and greet. So they had the launch bay, and then they were like, "Let's
got to pull people out of the rest of the park.
We have to spread it around as possible, just to eat people and eat time, because there was nothing to do in the park." And I think that's why it went away too, and with the fashion show. But anyway, I have to run sadly. I really wish I could stay. I had another commitment. But yeah, if you haven't been, go to Galaxy's Edge, go to Batu. It's super cool. Rise of the Resistance. Even as someone who doesn't know everything that's happening in the ride, I think it is unbelievable. I love it. So go check it out. And Josh, thanks for having me. And Darren, awesome meeting you.
Nice to meet you. Now you know your homework. Disney Plus marathon. All night films.
I kind of want to do it with Star Wars fans though, so they could if I have questions, they could help me out.
So
there you go.
When this quarantine is over, come on over and we'll watch Star Wars. We'll just go through them all. It'll be fun.
All right, sounds good.
All right,
guys.
Thank you. See ya.
See you later. Till the Spire.
Till the Spire. All right, we're gonna fade Pete out here. There we go. All right, so it's just the two of us now. Now we can talk about Pete.
Well, one thing before we got deep into Galaxy's Edge, because there is one other Star Wars thing that I know of, and that would be at Legoland. So Legoland has also had a lot of Star Wars things. So they had Star Wars Miniland. And again, this was a contract separate from the figures. So you had Lego sets that were Star Wars, but this was a contract between Lucasfilm and Merlin Entertainment, which is what owned the Legoland parks.
Yep.
And so they had Miniland, and you had all sorts of these little vignettes built in their Miniland scale, and it looked amazing. And we had that for many, many years. And fortunately, at many of the Legolands around, including the one here in California, we had a Lego Star Wars weekend where we would come out with the costumes, and we would have events. And and I bring it up because, and I know we'll get into it when we talk about Batu, and especially the fact that it's this post-Empire First Order time, is really Legoland was the only place you could go if you wanted to see Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader and stormtroopers and things out of the classic trilogy, because we brought those to that event. And unfortunately those events have gone away. They've actually removed the Miniland now. It went out, I think, in January of this year, and we didn't have Legoland weekends this year. Last year was the last one they had, and it was just sad. I mean, it was a long run that we got to do that. But I could see Disney being like, no, if you want to see Star Wars, you have to come to our park now. So it totally makes sense. But it is sad that it was a fun way to interact people with Star Wars that wasn't so, I guess, scripted, as Disney is. Sure. Disney's very this is how it's going to be and this is how you're going to enjoy it, which isn't bad. It's just how Disney runs. And Legoland was much looser and family flowing, I think, in that regard. But those were great weekends, and I'm really happy I got to do those when they were available.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. I was unsure, and the Legoland here in Florida went away on January 6th. That was its last day of this past year.
Yeah, so. They pulled out all of them, I think, the beginning of this year. So we actually have Legoland passes, which are kind of sitting in limbo right now, but we went in January, or no, we went slightly after, and so I took some pictures of the area, and it's just sad because it's literally just planters now. They just ripped everything out, and there's the big alcove where the Death Star was, and it's just stars. They're just gone, and I'm just it's so sad. But I mean, it's business. It's the way it is.
I wonder if that was a Disney thing where Disney just basically told them, all right, your licensing deal is up. We're not renewing.
I believe it was just the contract ended. They couldn't renew it because Disney said no. And again, I understand it. I think it's really, we want you to come to our park and experience Star Wars. But Star Wars is big enough for many parks, in my opinion. But it wasn't to be.
So speaking of multiple parks and multiple things, so Galaxy's Edge, is this big thing. It's planned to open. Everyone's excited for it. But one of the things I remember hearing a whole bunch was, why is it the same on the East Coast and the West Coast? Why is it the same place? Why isn't it,
Why not? I mean,
well, then if
you're going to design an entire park, why design two
Why design it
parks?
twice? The big thing was there's so many places to be able to visit within the Star Wars, universe where it's like, why not do Tatooine at Disneyland and then do Coruscant?
You are getting the
World.
hotel, so that's going to be a big difference.
Well, we are.
Hotel experience.
But I heard something about. I could look into it and research it right now if I wanted to. But I heard something about because of this whole COVID-19 situation that the hotel is going to be on hold or is delayed.
Which makes sense, but it's still, from everything I've heard, it was never planned to be out here on the West Coast. It was
I don't think that there's room for it out there.
I don't know where you would put it.
No, the only place I think you'd be able to put it in Disneyland would be where Galaxy's Edge is butted up against Ball Road. If you go right across the street, there's a Ramada, I think, is the hotel. Whatever the hotel is, it's right across the street. There's like a cast member parking lot, and there's a hotel right there. And I think if the Disney bought that hotel,
Sky Bridge or something, and
they basically have to buy it and then make some sort of Sky Bridge over and all that kind of stuff. I don't see that happening just because in Disneyland, you had the whole I-5 hotel project, and they were going to buy Garden Walk, and they were going to make that the extension of Downtown Disney and do this whole new hotel, and all of it got shut down.
Florida, Disney World is built for tourists. Like, it is built for the international. It's got the space, so honestly, we can just go there. Like, we don't need to have it over here as well. I thought we wouldn't mind it, but
sure. Well, it's
such a smaller footprint.
Very expensive. I don't remember the exact price, but it was something like $400 or $500 a person per night, minimum 2 nights, something like that. Like, no matter if it's a kid or an adult, it's like that.
It was expensive. We'll leave it at lots of credits.
Yeah, a ton of credits. Like, you need those gold things from those Mandalorian metal things for currency.
Lots of Spiras. Got to load them up.
Is that what those are called?
Spiras are the ones, the RFID payment tokens you can use in Galaxy's Edge. So it's like a gift card that you can load up. But I think you have to put $100 on it to actually get one. But then you can load it and unload it just like a normal gift card. But then you get to keep it, and it looks cool. It's all metal. So
Galaxy's Edge, it opens to just insane crowds. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't open to hardly any crowds because they limit anybody to be able to get in. You
had the windows. You had 4 hours to go,
and you had to be staying on property. At Disneyland, you had to be staying on property, and Rise of the Resistance was not open yet. So you had one attraction. You had Docking Bay 7. You had Oga's Canteen. You had the milk stand, and you had Ronto Roasters, and then the popcorn cart, and all that stuff was open for food.
You had the Droid Depot.
Droid Depot, and the Savi's was open. The lightsaber.
Right, Savi's workshop. Yeah. So it's like 90% there.
It is. However, the big problem kind of came where Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run was never designed to be the e-ticket in that land. It's always been Rise of the Resistance. Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is always designed as like, a C ticket, D ticket, right? It's never been like the big headliner. And when it opened, it was basically acting in place as the big headliner, and it was never designed for that. So there were all these people complaining about the ride, and understandably, because you have this land with one attraction and you're waiting 90 minutes to 3 hours for this ride, and you get in and you're like, it's good, but it's not the best.
And it's interesting how it was this weird perfect storm of psychology as well, because I remember the last big opening I remember was Cars Land, and that was nuts for a long time.
Yeah.
And we didn't even try to go to it for 8 or 9 months, and then eventually it calmed down and you could just walk in and Radiator Springs always had a long line, but you could single rider it or do something and it wasn't too bad. But in the beginning it was just crazy. It's 200-minute wait something.
But Radiator Springs Racers is a proper e-ticket. Radiator Springs Racers is an amazing ride. I still don't exactly understand the story of that ride, because you just walk through Radiator Springs and then you're going to go drive through Radiator Springs, which I'm like, but I was just in Radiator Springs, but cool. All right. Everything's animated now.
My point being, though, is that I feel that there was this perfect storm of people going, oh, I'm just not going to go to Galaxy's Edge for the beginning because it's going to be crazy. And on top of that, you had the windows. And on top of that, you had not every ride is open. And so it gave this perception that, oh, this land is a flop. which I don't feel the Galaxy's Edge is a flop.
No,
I feel like
it's not.
People were like the vast majority of the connected internet was like, well, I don't want to go opening week. That sounds not fun.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. So from other shows and other podcasts and things, from people who actually know, they were saying that Disney executives were freaking out because, particularly in Disneyland. So apparently Disneyland, unlike Disney World, where it's generally families will go, I think it's once every 3 years on average or so, if you are like a regular to Disney World. If you are a regular to Disneyland, not a season pass holder who goes every weekend and doesn't buy anything and goes home, but like a regular, you visit Disneyland normally, you generally go twice a year. So you go like once in the fall or at Christmas, and then you go once in the summer or the spring. And people were basically, they were not going in the fall anymore. They were going to wait until January, February, once Rise of the Resistance opened.
Right.
And so Disneyland was seeing just crowd levels that were so low they hadn't seen them in a long time, which is why you saw Soarin' Over California come back as opposed from just Soarin'.
Right.
You saw, I think it was the Main Street Electrical Parade came back for a limited time. It was the park was trying to just infuse locals, like come back. No, don't hold off on your stuff.
And then you had people who would go to the park and go to Galaxy's Edge, and then I remember hearing people say the rest of the park is empty. That it's pulling, that when it did pull people, it did very well. And you had people like, oh, I'm walking on all these other rides because everybody's crowded into Galaxy's Edge. That's why they're there, especially when the Rise of Resistance came out.
Oh yeah, and see the thing is with Rise of the Resistance is you had to get a boarding group. So we've never seen Rise of the Resistance just open because of this whole pandemic. It's always been boarding groups, so we don't know what the lines are going to be.
I think boarding groups is good. I've read a couple articles about it, and they were kind of like, these are the 3 ways you can do it. You can do it with a boarding group, which for people who don't know is you have to have swiped your ticket into the park. You don't have to actually be in the park, but you have to have swiped your entry ticket.
Yep.
And then you use the mobile Disney Play app, and you basically have to hit the button at the right time at 8, and it'll randomly put you in a boarding group if you're able to. And when it does that, then it says, okay, you're in boarding group 55. And so now we're serving boarding groups 1 through 8.
Right.
And then you have to come back. So that's the current way. But really the only other 2 ways you could think of is you just open up the ride and people queue like crazy for hours and hours and hours.
Which they would. It would be a 5 to 8 hour line for sure for that ride.
And where would you put that line?
Yeah.
Because you have to put it somewhere.
The queue is huge, and I've heard that it'll hold the same amount of people that Flight of Passage in Pandora will hold at Animal Kingdom, which I've been told that'll hold 5 hours worth of queue inside of that building if they packed it out. Like to the point that they actually just installed bathrooms mid-queue at Flight of Passage because it's just they had to, right? Now, they don't often load that queue that much. They'll load it with like 2 hours worth of people, and then they keep people outside, or they were keeping people outside because of the restrooms and all that kind of stuff. Now, Rise of the Resistance I've heard is that big. I've walked through most of the standby queue. Obviously not all of it because they didn't have to open the entire thing, and it's massive. It's ginormous. Now I've done Fast Pass and I've done either or. I've gone through both queues, so I could totally see.
Right, and that's the other option. So is you just open it, or you have some sort of Fast Pass, but you still have the same problem as just opening it with a Fast Pass.
Well, and if you opened it with Fast Pass, that would actually make the standby line longer, because Fast Pass actually makes the standby queues vastly longer than they would be without a Fast Pass system. I think the boarding groups is fine.
Because they could go faster. Yeah, I think it's the best solution.
I agree.
To the problem. Like, there is no perfect solution besides build 5 Galaxy's Edges and crank the people through, but that's just not going to happen.
And the way they've done it is fantastic. There's two separate loading tracks. So there's 4 cars at any one time being loaded with 6 guests each. So you've got 6, 12, 24 people at any one time being loaded into these cars every 60 seconds being pumped through. I want to say that I was told that the final output of that ride it's low. It's like 1,500 or 2,000 people an hour, which is pretty low for an e-ticket ride. When I want to say, I think Haunted Mansion's like 3,000 people.
But I mean, it's the most complex e-ticket ride we've ever seen.
It's the most complex ride, of any attraction ever in existence, and it's amazing. I've been on it 3 times, I think, and it's fantastic. We'll get into that in a second, but it's an amazing attraction. So let's go into the land just in general. So when you walk into the land, there's two sections. There's the Resistance Forest, and then there's Black Spire Outpost, where the First Order has basically just landed and they're taking over everything. The stormtroopers.
You got stormtroopers walking around. You got Kylo Ren popping out.
Flags.
Rey and Vi are sneaking around. Yeah. Chewie's there.
And what's really cool about that is you'll see them interacting with guests. Like I remember walking by the Millennium Falcon, and you've got Chewie and Rey and Vi. They're all hiding behind like the landing gear for the Falcon as the stormtroopers walk by, and then they're secretly trying to load something into the Falcon really quick without getting seen. And it's this whole little show that'll happen, and the guests get into it. Like they'll.
Oh yeah.
Talk to the stormtroopers if they're part of the rebellion or part of the Empire if they want to be on that side, and they'll try to like tell them where Chewie is, and vice versa. It's also funny. I heard a story once from a friend of mine who said that they went to the Disneyland opening, and he was there with a friend, and Rey and his friend had like this encounter, and Rey pulled his friend aside, and they went over to the corner. They started talking, and Rey was asking, unlike other Disney, character interactions where it's like, what's your name? How's your day? Like,
right.
Are you, whatever.
Right.
Rey was asking, what is your life's purpose? Have you felt the Force? You did all this other stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, that's a level of just, you don't go to a Disney park and start getting asked what your life's purpose is and how.
Well, then you have the cast members, and all the cast members have like a role, like they're citizens of Batuu. And that's a whole nother level of park immersion. And just so the fact that like when you're in that part of the park and the way the spires are built, like you don't even feel like you're in Disneyland. You feel like you're in the outpost.
Yeah, no, it's really well built.
The immersion is complete.
Yeah, the sight lines are perfect. It sounds like you're there. It feels like you're there. It's a really well-built land. There are times, in my opinion, where the theming gets a little bland, like when you're going through the forest section, there's just a lot of trees, obviously. But you do have like the X-Wing and you have the A-Wing hanging out. And there's things to look at and things to do. And then you have the marketplace, which is cool in theory. It has its problems because each shop is really small and it's just a hallway. And so you get this kind of cross traffic hitting each other, and everyone's trying to get into the shop and see what's there. It's not impossible to navigate, but it's not perfect either, but it's well done. I think the land in general is really great. They did a really good job at creating a Star Wars location that isn't a particular location, if that makes sense. So like it feels like Star Wars, it looks like Star Wars, it sounds like Star Wars, but it's nowhere we had ever seen. And
exactly,
they did a really good job with it on that level. My one complaint with Galaxy's Edge is the cantina, basically.
Okay.
It's very small. You even if you do get in, you're limited to, I think it's a max of 45 minutes. The one time I've been in, we managed to get seated at a table, which is very rare. We got seated at a table with like 3 other groups because it's just like there's 2 seats at a table. You're sitting here. 2 other guests then came in and got sat at our table. They got up to go look around, and literally within 30 seconds, they had sat 2 new people at our table.
Wow.
And they tell you, do not get up from the table. Like, if you get up from this table, we will assume you have left and we'll seat somebody. A lot of the times it's standing room only at the bar, and a lot of times it's you may not be with your party. It's if there's a spot at the bar, you go. You may not be together because it's so small. And they limit you to, I think it's 45 minutes, and that's it. I really wish they had built kind of like what Universal did in Diagon Alley with the wand situation. I kind of wish that they had built multiple rooms, so like 2 identical bars.
Right.
So they still feel small and intimate, but you can take double or triple your attendance, right? Because you have multiple versions of it.
Yeah.
That's grandiose and expensive, but I kind of wish that's what they had done, in my opinion.
Well, I was trying to think. So you have Mickey's Toontown in '93.
Sure.
And after that, I mean, you kind of have like the Tomorrowland remake, but really, Toontown in '93 is the last time we had a new from scratch land added to Disneyland.
Disneyland,
to Disneyland. I mean, that's a huge amount of time. To really be like, so all that to say though, but you really feel like the culmination of everything they've learned in the past few decades, and it's all pumped into Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, it's just getting better and better. So like you have Toontown, you have Cars Land, or like all of Hollywood Studios basically, right? Because Hollywood Studios opened in what, like
That's
88.
true. Cars Land. Yeah,
and
that
then,
was newer.
Well, that's California Adventure though. But you have Cars Land, which was I actually think Cars Land is, from a design perspective, I think it's at or possibly a little bit better than Galaxy's Edge.
It's a simpler thing to pull off. So
it is, for sure.
You basically just make it look like the movie, and you're good.
Right.
But
well, and that's where the argument for Galaxy's Edge is where it's like, well, why didn't they just pick something from the movie? Because it would have been so easy. You just make that. I think it was very brave to do something that we hadn't seen, and I think they pulled it off really, really well. They did a very good job. So let's move on real quick. So we're low on time here. So Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. We talked about Star Tours. We talked about the Star Tours Adventures Continues. We talked about getting with the movie overlay and everything. Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is kind of like the eventual evolution of Star Tours, right?
Right.
So
it's the actual interactive Star Tours.
Exactly. And by interactive, it's interactive meaning you do actually get to control stuff, but it has been shown that if you just don't touch something, the computer will just take over.
Right.
Yeah. So
but you can.
But you can.
And that's to talk about that for a second. You really have to go with a crew. Like if you get paired with like two other people that you don't know and they're the pilots, you're not going to have as much of a fun time. So it's it just to get the most out of it. You really need to go in with a group of 6, pre-assigned, and you just go.
Yeah, and I've been on it a couple of times, and it's good, but I'm one of the weirdos who the original incarnation of that ride was that you could literally crash and destroy your ship and the ride would end. And they toned it down because it was like, people are going to get pissed if they wait 2 hours for this ride and 40 seconds
I didn't learn the buttons fast enough and I crashed. Yeah.
And the ride's over, right? So you have to have some form of like ability to just understand that not everyone can play video games that well.
Right. The way they built the ride, like the carousel of cockpits.
Oh, it's genius.
It's so smart.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about the entire ride is when you're walking through the Millennium Falcon going in, the hallway has like boxes and they're stacked on top of each other and things like that. Well, when you leave, it's that exact same hallway, but it's not that exact same hallway.
Yeah.
But what they did is they toppled over the boxes. That now there's wires, now there's things. So it looks like you actually broke the ship, and you're actually it's that level of design is genius. I will say I'm excited for new missions. I think it should be randomized, in my opinion. I know that there are other missions. I can't wait for them to turn them on, basically. And having randomized missions would be fantastic, where you go on and it's one of 5 scenarios as opposed to the same thing over and over again. And I think the other thing, too, with that attraction that a lot of people had trouble connecting with is it's directly connected to Solo, a Star Wars story, because that film was predicting to do really, really well. And so that attraction is basically the train heist from that movie,
right?
More or less. And if you didn't like the movie, if you never saw the movie, or you were one of the ones who didn't connect with the movie,
you're kind of missing a piece of the backstory.
Yeah. And when I first went on Smuggler's Run, hadn't seen the movie. And the moment I saw the movie, I went, I get it now. Okay, I totally understand.
Or if you've never seen Clone Wars and you don't know who Hondo is.
Exactly.
The more you're immersed, the better you're going to experience it. And that's a give and take when you make that decision to build your ride like that.
Yeah. And I think the more people experience Star Wars, or hopefully experience Star Wars, the more they'll understand. I think they've done a good enough job where you don't have to have seen those things or been immersed in that story to be able to understand what's happening. But if you are, if you have seen those things and you know those storylines and those characters, it just adds another level of awesome, basically, to the attraction. So all that being said, Rise of the Resistance. So Rise of the Resistance finally opens. People lose their minds over it. I've ridden it several times. It took me a long time to get a full POV, which is on the Attractions Tube channel. You should check it out. It's in full 3D binaural audio, so it actually feels like you're there. If you wear headphones, it's great. That attraction, in my opinion, is the best theme park attraction that has ever been built.
Oh, it's
ever.
Well, because it combines, trackless, drive system.
Yep.
You have multiple elevators. You have multiple, every little piece from like cutting the ceiling open to, the escape pod to the queue. The queue is like half the attraction.
The queue is amazing. I mean, yeah, from the moment you're in the queue, you go, for those who don't know, you enter in through the Rebellion base, the Rebel base, the hidden Rebel base, right? And you enter through, and then you board a transport ship, and what you're doing is I can't remember the exact mission, but you're going on a mission, and you get taken by the First Order, and you get brought into a Star Destroyer, and just that section alone is incredible.
It's like a ride of itself.
And it's just the queue. That's all it is. It's the queue, but it's amazing. And then it opens up into the room, right? It opens up into the Star Wars room. It's the room with all the stormtroopers. That was at the beginning of this video. If you're watching this back on YouTube, that room, which is huge and it's incredible. And when we filmed it, it was us and 4 other people, and that's it. So we basically had the run of that room. It was amazing. And then you go down a hallway and you get out into where you're put into jail cells, and then from there you get broken out of the jail cell and you get put into your transport vehicles, and now the ride starts. What's really funny about it is I remember watching back our video and going, okay, this is about a 20-minute video. The ride doesn't start till about 14 minutes.
The actual ride proper.
Yeah, it's all queue.
And then you get on the trackless system, and then that's the whole rest of it's amazing.
It's so good. And above and beyond that, just you get into the room with the AT-ATs, which are full-size AT-ATs, and it's incredible.
You're moving up and down levels.
Yep.
You're in the, and then you have like the drop elevator for when you're leaving.
Pod,
I mean, it's like part Tower of Terror, part Ratatouille trackless, part Soarin', part. I mean, it's literally the culmination.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's the culmination of basically all theme park technology put into one attraction, and it's amazing. One of the most spectacular things on that ride that I don't think people realize is at least I think this is how they work, the blast cannon. So at one point, you escape Kylo Ren's lightsaber in the elevator shaft that you're in, and you make, you make this turn, and then you make a left, and you're going by some giant cannons that are trying to blow up the rebels as they're trying to, get on the ship.
Like the standard Star Destroyer cannons that shoot out the windows.
Those cannons, I think, are trackless ride vehicles because they're moving.
Because they're moving in and out around you.
Yeah, and they're moving on into your space, and the car is actually one car, because there's 2 cars at this point. So there's 2 cars kind of like this, and at one point, let me switch to my camera. There's 2 cars like this, right? So at one point, one car moves ahead, and the ion blast or whatever it is traps you. And so there's a car, a blaster, and another car, and then it moves, and then you get trapped again, and then you both escape. And it's
like a video game where you have to jump between the platforms.
It's exactly that. It's basically Mario, right? Where you have to jump in between all these things. It's absolutely incredible. And I think that, like I said, it's just the culmination of all this theme park technology brought into one attraction that makes it the best attraction, period, that's ever been made. I cannot wait to see what trumps it, because something will eventually. I'm guessing it'll be Disney who does it. Maybe Universal with Universal's Epic Universe that's being built. It's a third theme park. There's some really cool potential ride tech coming with that, and Nintendo Land, and we'll see what happens there. But right now it's that. So Star Wars at the Disney park. Star Wars, I mean, it's basically only Disney, right? Oh, well, and Legoland. But Star Wars at the theme parks has had this really interesting history, and you can totally track that history back to this modern attractions, like Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, is clearly an iteration of what they learned from Star Tours, then what they learned from doing Star Tours in the various randomized missions, the randomized adventures you would have on it,
right?
And then to Millennium Falcon, and then you take all their other tech and you just mold that into Rise of the Resistance. I'm excited to see what happens for the future of Star Wars. I don't know where they're going to go now that the Skywalker saga is done. I don't know how they're going to mold like Mandalorian into this land and things, but...
And that's the thing, though. I mean, every couple of years, maybe within 5 or 8 years or whatever, they're going to do another refresh over Galaxy's Edge, and they're going to add... Maybe they'll take out Kylo Ren's shuttle and put the Mandalorian... Like, imagine they took out Kylo Ren's shuttle and they put the Razor Crest there.
Oh, yeah. Amazing.
From the Mandalorian, and then the Mandalorian is walking around. You could totally do that and pretty much have the exact same thing going on.
Or you put him in the Rebel Forest where he's out there. But who knows? Like that brings up to the question though. Like timeline wise, are they going to at some point just go forget
because
it?
Because they put a line on the map, dot on the map, and they said this is when Galaxy's Edge happens.
Yeah,
and again it makes sense on why they're doing it, because they knitted it together, because you have like Vi Morales is in the books, and you have other things going on, but like you said, like as we move farther and farther away from the sequel trilogy being fresh in everyone's mind, is Kylo Ren ever going to disappear?
Right. I have a feeling it will at some point. I have a feeling what's going to happen is, like you said, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 12 years from now. Basically, at that moment when the bulk of humanity has been able to visit, right, they're going to do some form of refresh. And I think what they're going to have to do is remove it from its place in time. The land can still remain because the place has been there. But as far as where it is in time, now the problem with that is Rise of the Resistance, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run,
but then that just becomes the ride. I mean, it and I don't really feel that's you have it be like, let's say for the sake of argument, they move it into the Galactic Civil War time, the main trilogy time, which I could see them doing because it's one of the most popular time frames of Star Wars. You just have that be. Like, oh, and then later in the future, this happened with Kylo Ren. Like it, Vi Morale and the super interactive elements don't references the rides.
Right.
They're not, except for Smuggler's Run, but that's just the Millennium Falcon, which is there the entire time.
And you can change that mission out at will, basically. Right. I think what's more likely to happen is they're just going to take it out of the timeline, and it's going to go the way Star Tours did, where it's like, forget timeline, who cares? People want to see these characters. They want to visit these destinations. Just let them visit it, which was George Lucas's thing. I mean, I don't know if you remember reading about that meeting where it was the Imagineers and George Lucas, and the Imagineers are the ones who brought up to George Lucas, hey, this doesn't match the timeline when they were talking about Star Tours The Adventures Continue. Right. And George Lucas went, who cares about the timeline? People want to visit these destinations. Just let them visit. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Galaxy's Edge. I don't see how it couldn't in like a 10 or even 20 year down the road.
That's where I feel, I mean, again, they could do whatever they want, but I think it would be smart to go back to the Galactic Civil War Empire time rather than maybe like where the, high, what is it called? The new book series is the High Empire.
Gosh.
I'm talking about like the new, the newest
I know
one.
what you're talking about, but I don't remember,
It's not Rise of the Republic, High Republic, I think is what it's called. I think something like that. Anyway, I get what you're saying about it. It's got to be disconnected from time. But in a sense, you still need to have some sort of continuity. So you don't want to have First Order troopers walking around with standard stormtroopers with clone troopers. Like, that doesn't make sense. So, but yeah, that could be. But then again, like some of those parts, like in a way, because it's Batuu, it's this planet. If you took out the stormtroopers and you put in clone troopers, now it's during the time of the galactic, it's during the prequel era. Like, honestly, you don't have to change much to have that. And let's say you took out the clone troopers and you put in standard stormtroopers. Same thing. Like, just by changing out the people, you can make it whenever you want. The rest of the place, because they didn't make it Tatooine or they didn't make it this specific planet, it's actually more interchangeable than you think it is.
Yeah, and actually that's a really smart way of doing that. I wonder if they thought about that, where it's like, let's make this place that we can make that you haven't seen in these other times, so you don't know what it looked like.
And again, we know Rise of the Resistance, like that would take a major overhaul. But again, you notice, I'm pretty sure the AT-ATs in Rise of the Resistance are Galactic Civil War AT-ATs, like from Hoth. Yeah. They're not the M9 giant gorilla ones from the little, First Order. Yeah. So they don't actually fit. But if you really wanted to, you could retool that with like Vader instead of Kylo Ren, and you're still on a Star Destroyer. Like, there's enough similarities that if you wanted to push that into the Galactic Empire time, you could. I don't think they need to. No, I think that's the sequel ride. That's what that's going to be.
Well, and there is. So real quick, we'll end on that for the last 2 minutes here, because I know you have to go. There are plans. There are like Phase 3 plans, and I know one of them that's been floating around. So Disney, I don't know if you know this, owns, I believe it's 40% of a company called The Void. They have.
I've been to The Void down in the. They have one in Downtown Disney here.
In Downtown Disney, right? Yeah, they have one in Disney Springs here. There's one in New York.
It has K2SO, so I had to go see it.
Okay. So Disney owns like 40% of that company, and part of the rumor is that they're using that company as potential test beds for new attractions. A black box attraction has always been something since Michael Eisner's era that they've wanted to put in, and we're kind of getting that at Epcot, where the old body, whatever that. Wonders of Life Pavilion. That's
Right.
becoming a play center that's going to have these kind of weird little black box. You can change it out real quick when a new movie opens. You can change the attraction real quick and test things in the parks.
Imagine something like the Void, but without the VR, but instead you use the technology that the Mandalorian used to create the artificial rooms.
And this is where I'm kind of going with that. Is the rumor is that at least here in Hollywood Studios, they're going to do some form of VR Void thing.
Okay.
There's space for it, apparently. The Incredibles area and all that butts up behind Galaxy's Edge is apparently on look at to be demolished, and they'd move it in there because you don't need a ton of space for this. Now you would need multiple theaters and it'd be a super low throughput. But imagine being able to do some form of immersive experience like that, right? Where you do either it's like the tech with the Mandalorian, which those who don't know, it's basically they didn't use green screens, they used giant LED panels, and they used the Unreal gaming engine. So when they moved the camera, the parallax was correct on the screens behind them. It's super nerd talk. There's YouTube videos, you can go check it out. But
even without that camera, if you just turned on the walls at that level of resolution, like when you see the behind the scenes shots, you feel like you're there. You feel like the room extends out 80 more feet.
The only problem with those LEDs is I did some trade show work with one of, if not the company who's the one who set up those LEDs. They're the company who did like Oblivion, the Cloud City. Those were all LED panels. They did First Man, that Ryan Gosling movie.
Yep.
I worked with them on some trade show stuff, and we did just some really minor like archway panel things. And wow, the heat that comes off of those panels, even though they're LEDs, is intense. So you would have to have some major cooling power to be able to build that into a theme park attraction with how big that would have to be. But that would be incredible. That would be absolutely incredible to do some form of like experience like the Void that's interactive, that's basically like, hey, you want to use a lightsaber? Here you go. And speaking of that, there's still the patented tech, I don't know if you saw this, where this has apparently been planned for Galaxy's Edge, where there was this fog that if you took this lightsaber, there's a lot like the wands from Harry Potter, and you went into this fog and you hit a button, the lightsaber came out, and you could see it.
Okay, but only a certain distance.
No. It was light. Yeah, it was all light, and it would come out and it would stop, and it was this fog was this reflective projection tech thing, and apparently it's been tested and it works, and Disney patented it. And the thought was that there were going to be parts of Galaxy's Edge where there would just be this fog, and if you walked in and you had, you were part of the rebellion or whatever, the system knows they would have a Sith waiting in the fog, and as you're walking through, the Sith would turn his lightsaber on, and now
so
you're
basically
supposed to turn yours on.
like the Yoda's cave.
Kind of, yeah. Because that's another thing that they haven't turned on is all the interactivity. For those who don't know, they're tracking everything you do inside of Galaxy's Edge.
Right.
Particularly here in Florida, because we have magic bands. They know how many times you've ridden Millennium Falcon. They know how many times you've ridden Rise of the Resistance.
That's right. They have the Resistance versus the First Order, And again, like the more I think about it, the more you could costume change, quote unquote, that land into the Galactic Civil War
like that.
So easily.
Yeah.
I mean, you take it down a couple of First Order banners and you put up some Galactic Empire banners and you're there.
Yeah.
So
and then there's also, speaking of all this interactivity as well, there's also the Play app, where you can go and you can hack all the stuff in the land. You can hack radio towers, and you can gain
which is kind of
and,
like, that's more of like the magic wand kind of thing, like Universal.
Yeah, that's exactly that, right. And it's actually really fun. Like, I went in once and I opened it up and I was playing Capture the Flag with other people in the park that I didn't meet them. We never talked.
That's cool.
But basically, you just walk up to the panels on the doors, and you have to walk up to it. You have to scan it. You have to stand there for a certain amount of time and create like a puzzle, and it'll turn blue or red. And you have to run around the land collecting as many of these and play Capture the Flag. And whoever gets them all, wins the game. And there's all this kind of interactivity stuff. Some of it's turned on, some of it hasn't. So the future of Galaxy's Edge, I think it's going to be super cool. It's only going to get better.
I agree. I don't feel like, this is all we're getting. It's like, no, they're going to refresh it. They're going to make changes. They're going to, they've done just as much in Tomorrowland, and nobody's been worried about that. Like, it's just the only thing I think about the Void VR thing that I think would be, which is why I think it's, in my mind, it would be more likely to do something like the Mandalorian room, is because, especially with COVID and things like this right now, putting people in a reused VR suit versus no VR suit.
Yeah.
Like we're almost there, So, but yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, Galaxy's Edge is going to be, it's their high attraction, value, and people are going to go back. It's, I think it's a success.
No
matter what you see on paper, it's a great land.
I think it's a total success. I mean, they're building another one in France, or they were. We'll see what happens. This whole COVID-19 thing has sent the Disney company
it's going to be very different
into a financial downturn. They've already canceled a whole bunch of projects at Walt Disney World. So we'll see. Things are going to continue to evolve, but it's going to be probably, 5 to 10 years behind where it would have been had this all not happened. There's nothing but good stuff in the future for it. I think it's an amazing land, and I cannot wait to see what they do with it. With that, thank you, Darren, for joining me.
Welcome.
On this May the 4th. Happy Star Wars Day.
Happy Star Wars Day.
Tomorrow we will have Revenge of the Fifth, and who knows what we might post. I'm running out of content. I can't go to the parks and film, so Attractions Tube is running out of content here, guys. I'm finding stuff, but it's a little difficult. I got a bunch of archive stuff coming.
Find all the people on TikTok that are making their own Star Wars land and Disneyland with the simulated buckets and
string
projectors
those together as an actual ride. No, we've got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming. We've got a lot of archive stuff coming from 20 years ago at Disneyland and a bunch of other fun stuff. So we'll be posting all that. Cool. So make sure you guys follow Darren here. Let me bring up his thing so you can check out. It's at Dr. Sci-Fi on Instagram. He's also on TikTok and also on Twitch as Dr. Sci-Fi. And then you can check out his website, which is drsci-fi.com. Check it out. He's got some really cool stuff. If you're into building, if you're into making, if you're into Star Wars, just check out his stuff. You will not be disappointed. He's into a lot of really, really cool things.
And if you're going to be at Star Wars Celebration, whenever that is next held, all my droids will be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Keep an eye out for K2. He's 7'2". You'll probably see him.
Yeah, and you'll see Darren behind him, puppeteering him, wearing flippers, right?
Dive fins, yes.
Yeah. Those are the feet. We'll maybe have you back on here. We'll chat more Star Wars. And we'll go into the puppet, and we'll go into how you made it.
Of course.
And do some of that stuff, because I know people will be super interested into that. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening or watching. If you guys are on YouTube, you guys can check us out at Attractions Tube. We are Attractions Tube on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Check us out on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all the other Google Podcasts, whatever other podcast aggregators there are. We're on all of them. Leave us a comment. Give us a rating. We'd love to know what you guys think of this show, and if you want to hear more of it. And if you don't want to hear it anymore, please stop listening and don't give us a comment or a rating. No, I'm kidding. Let us know if you like it. Let us know if you don't. Let us know what we should change, what we should fix. Thank you guys for listening and or watching. My name is Josh Quillin, and see you guys next time. Bye.
May the Force be with you.
And may the Force be with you.